And welcome back once again to the Endurance Hour Podcast, episode 396. Back alongside Kona coach Wendy Mader, Dave Erickson here. Lots of questions from our athletes, listeners, and followers today. It's going to be a jam-packed full of triathlon gold for you today. We're going to begin, though, with some feedback of one of our athletes who just did a triathlon last week. Wendy, this is Jose. What's Jose have to say?
He said, "Hey, Wendy, I just finished my triathlon last week. I thank you for the training plan. It was very laid out, even though I missed a few weeks due to a knee injury." I believe he followed one of our Olympic distance plans.
Okay.
I felt great at the finish line, and I'm interested in the half Ironman distance next year. I think I'll take the weight training days more seriously, though, because I think skipping those may have affected my knee. Thank you for the plan and all the resources. Looking forward to more training after I overcome runner's knee.
Now that really, punctuates the point on how important cross training is throughout the year and even leading up to your triathlon season, Coach, right? With getting core, flexibility, strength, and ligaments.
Absolutely. And again, I appreciate his feedback, and I'm glad he took advantage of all the resources, and he learned a lot about doing the triathlon and the importance of strength training.
Yeah. Good job. Thank you, Jose, for the feedback. And next up, we did a couple of posts yesterday, both on YouTube and Instagram. I was out on a bike ride, and I wanted to, give a little heads up to the podcast today. And I asked for any feedback, any questions you have relating to, swimming, biking, running, racing, training, or recovery. And we got this one on Instagram, on the Endurance Hour Instagram account from the Crusty Triathlete, who writes here, "I'm racing Steelhead 70.3 in a few weeks. I've watched some videos from prior races, and quite frankly, the waves on Lake Michigan look frightening. I'm a strong swimmer, but I've never had to deal with big waves. What advice would you offer?" I think this is perfect for Wendy.
Thank you for the question. I grew up in Michigan, and I have swum in Lake Michigan multiple times. I don't think the waves are as big as you think they are, at least for me back then. The main thing about Lake Michigan was the cold water temperatures. So it's going to be cold usually, in the spring, early summer. So the cold water, the waves that you've seen, again, it could have been due to a cold front coming in. It's not always wavy. So don't anticipate just because you're swimming in Lake Michigan that it's going to be wavy. And I'm going to give you the most obvious advice is if you can get in the water before your race, just to ease your mind and, practice what the waves are going to feel like, because turbulent water conditions, I've done a couple YouTube videos on this already, are going to change your stroke rate, your breathing, your sighting, and just anxiety level. So you want to make sure you want to know that when the waves, if they're coming at your face, you may have to lift your body a little bit higher out of the water to sight a buoy on occasion. It's not always going to happen. And then usually when there's more turbulence in the water, choppy water conditions, your stroke rate's going to be a little bit faster. So if you can't practice under those conditions in open water, you can definitely practice sighting as well as a higher stroke rate in the pool area. And then, it's not an ocean, but again, in some turbulent ocean swims, there's a technique that you can use of timing the wave coming at you and diving under the wave so it doesn't knock you down. It's not that wavy. It's a lake. It's not an ocean. But just for future ocean swims if it's turbulent.
Great question. Thanks very much. And you can always please follow us on Instagram, and then where you can leave some questions for us there if that's your main way of communicating on social media. Another option is YouTube, the Endurance Hour YouTube channel. Got over 2,000 videos there. Been doing this for over a decade with athlete interviews, amateur and professional race coverage when I was working with Ironman as an Ironman triathlon reporter, commentating, editing, all that kind of good stuff. And then a lot of our stuff that Wendy and I have done with questions, demonstrations, it's all on there. So the same video was posted there, and it came back with this question. If I had to focus on 2 of the 3 disciplines for triathlon, which 2 should I focus on more in preparation for a sprint triathlon? Coach?
Well, The first thing I want to say is if it's your first triathlon, most triathletes are weaker swimmers. So it's really important to focus on the swim if that's one of your weaker events. Having said that, if you're a competent swimmer and you can swim the distance and you're going to be fine, whether it's a pool or lake swim, I'd always say for most distance races, focus on the bike and the run because the swim is such a small percentage of the overall race. I think you're going to get more bang for your buck by focusing on the bike, number one, and then the run.
I'm going to do a little, what percentage of a triathlon is the swim? See if they give me a number here. So they'll say here, an Olympic, it's only 3% for an
That's not
Olympic.
that much. That's not that much, but you still need to know how to swim. No matter what the distance is, you
Yeah.
need to know how to swim. So again, this is all relative to the person and what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Is that right? I'm just quick immediate answer from what percentage, how much swimming, how many I should, how much percentage, various distances. Anyhow, it's very small.
It is small.
Speaking,
So yeah.
go ahead. All right. My bad. Sorry for the interruption. This one is a great question for probably new triathletes and those as a reminder for some of the seasons ones that it's okay. What do you wear under your tri-suit, if anything, Coach?
So when I first read this question, I was thinking they meant like a speed suit because that's a something that you put over your tri-suit for open water swimming when it's non-wetsuit legal. But specific to a tri-suit, the tri-suit was created to fit to make sure that it's a snug, comfortable article of clothing that it's like a swimsuit. It's made of it's lycra and it's got a thin pad and it's the women's have sports bras normally within the tri top. And then so some of them come in a tri top and a tri bottom and some tri suits are one full length suit that you zip in front. So if you're female, you may want to wear a sports bra under it. Sometimes you don't have to if it's built in. Otherwise, you don't have to wear anything under your tri-suit. If you're wearing a wetsuit, you want to make sure you're wearing a tri-suit or a swimsuit underneath your wetsuit.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of that, why wear a speed suit over a tri-suit if a tri-suit is snug and form-fitting to your body?
That's a great question that I'm not sure yet because I've done races in a one-piece tri-suit that feels like a speed suit. So because the speed suits back in the day when they were first made had a little bit of lycra material. And so now they're not supposed to be made with that lycra material, so they provide no flotation. And so this day and age, I think it keeps it more, it's tighter, it's more compact. And so if you happen to be wearing a tri top and tri bottom, it could get a little bit baggy around the waistline unless you're tucking your tri top under your tri shorts and you're tying it up. And the tri suit's just going to be a little bit more snug. But it doesn't provide any buoyancy and it's not necessarily supposed to provide any performance enhancing in your swim as far as speed goes. So I don't know. I'm sure people know the answer to that question, but I don't.
Well, my first reaction, since a speed suit is meant to be as hydrodynamic as possible to reduce drag, some of these tri-suits have pockets, especially in the back for a water bottle or for gels, those kind of things. So there is that potential for drag and loose ends and pockets. So the tighter you can have a suit, if you don't have any of those pockets, some of these tri-suits, zip up in the back, so there's no friction in the front for a zipper, and then they'll have small pockets on the hip or maybe a little bit in the back, but not big enough for a water bottle per se, maybe a flask. And so those speed suits, reduce as much drag, and they know all you need to do is have a tight, smooth surface all the way around.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm going back to the days before speed suits were made, and I first started triathlon wearing a swimsuit, and then I used to wear a two-piece all the time. And I remember wearing the two-piece, the tank top would be a little bit flimsy, a little bit drag toward on the bottom of the waistline. But again, I never noticed it necessarily slowing me down.
Here's something else I thought about. People, and I've done this for years now, is I'll wear my race belt underneath my wetsuit, which is on top of my tri-suit. Now, if you want to avoid that potential time loss in transition to put on a race belt with your number on it, you
Hmm.
could have that speed suit over your race number and not have to worry about putting on a race number later. Just, I mean, depends how you want to wear things. It's
Right.
not that big of a time suck, but it is one more thing you have to think about in transition is putting on that race belt and that number, which can flap. It will flap if you were to try to wear it in just your tri suit, which I would never do that
Right.
in the water. All right, questions here. More questions. This is from Chris. What exactly do the fins do for you? I feel like it's very deceiving using fins and practicing with fins instead of without fins. Coach, there's a purpose behind the equipment we use, these tools that we use in addition to our swimming workouts, like fins. So, what is the purpose of fins?
Well, first and foremost, most people will, like myself, will wear fins so I can engage my legs because when I swim, I rarely kick. So when I put on fins, it's because I want to get my legs moving and my arm speed slows down because I'm usually using the fins in the kick to propel myself forward instead of using my upper body. So I use them mostly on recovery days. It's very relaxing to me. Second, fins, if your legs sink, fins will bring your legs up on the surface of the water without wearing the pull buoy or wearing a wetsuit. So they do help reduce drag. And then the third component of fins is to help those swimmers who have weak or less ankle flexibility. It helps them get more flexible ankles. And in return, when you have more flexible ankles without wearing fins, you'll be able to keep your legs higher on top of the water.
How often would you have fins in a workout that lasts maybe an hour? What percentage of that time would be fin related? Because I don't think you would suggest a full workout with fins.
No, no, not at all. I mean, for someone like me, of course, I wear fins all the time. But for the general average triathlete, normal triathlete who needs to work on swimming and they need to work on upper body strength, using fins during the warm up session, just to get your legs loose, get your body loose, wear fins during certain drills. So again, when you're doing certain drills, when you're focusing on an aspect of the stroke without having to worry about propulsion, you can have the fins on to help propel you through the water while you're focused on some sort of aspect of the freestyle stroke. So generally in like warm-ups and cool downs is when I will specify saying, wear fins. If you have fins, wear them now.
This question from Matt. I bought a new pair of running shoes, and a friend of mine said I should get one size larger than my actual size due to the feet swelling when running. What are your thoughts, advice, and opinion on going a half a size up or one full size up for your running shoes because your feet may swell?
Again, that's a great question, and you'll probably get a lot of different answers. For me, I'm generally a size 7.5, but in some shoe brands I can wear a 7, and other shoe brands I wear an 8. But if I had to choose, I normally would go down a size to a 7 rather than the 8. I have heard the same advice. I've read up on this, and for the longer events, like an Ironman, I will choose if I have to choose between a 7.5, a 7, or an 8. I'll choose the 8 because it doesn't really bother me to go up a half a size. I wouldn't go up a full size. To me, that's just way too much, and that could cause your feet to slip in the shoe. That could cause blisters. That could potentially cause an injury. So I think it's really good advice to potentially go up a half a size larger. And if you're going to make sure you're training in the shoes that you plan to race with, because your feet probably won't swell during a training day, but they will swell during race day, depending on how hot the conditions are going to be.
Here are two responses that I found online. Runners' feet may swell both during and after runs for a number of reasons. First, tight and restrictive running shoes can contribute to swelling. Since ill-fitted shoes often squeeze the toes and
Hmm.
heels, muscles in the feet become overwhelmed in trying to maintain balance while running, resulting in swelling. Another response here, while some swelling may be unavoidable, you can still take some preventative measures. Many runners opt to go half a size up in their running shoes to leave some room for swelling during long runs. You can also lace them slightly looser than usual while maintaining tension around the ankle for support.
Yeah, that's good advice too. Yeah.
This question from Karen. Hey, Wendy, I listened to your podcast a few weeks ago when you discussed gearing when climbing. And I have a follow-up question. What are your thoughts about standing versus sitting? This is from Karen.
Again, another great question. So the main reasons that people will stand on a bike is going when they're going uphill. If the climb is too steep and they start to slow down their pedaling and their cadence, and if you get below 50 RPMs, that's usually when the point where you're going to have to stand if you're not already standing. So the grade of the hill, the length of the hill is going to cause someone to stand. When you stand, you generate more force, more power, you use more glutes and hamstrings and quads, and you just use more muscle groups to make you get up the hill. Another reason that standing is beneficial is if you're just uncomfortable and you want to change positions, you want to give your saddle a little bit of break, that you're going to stand just to stretch out your legs. And the best time to stand, what I'm going to recommend, is when you're going uphill. Now, one thing I thought about, and I think about this while I'm racing and standing, is if I have a huge tailwind, then I'm actually going to take advantage of that tailwind and I'm going to stand if needed. If I'm feeling like I need to stand to give my legs a rest or engage more muscles, especially on a flat course, because flat courses, when you're aero for so long, standing is actually beneficial to stretch out your back. I will sometimes wait until I have a tailwind, so I'm giving the more surface area of my body, and the wind is going to push me forward, rather than standing when I have a headwind, when again my surface area is going to increase and I have that headwind, and that's going to slow me down.
Interesting. Yeah, I never thought about standing up with a tailwind. I guess it all depends on how flat your approach is, or if a tailwind going uphill, that might even be better, right? If you stand, because then your body's creating a sail.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh. Everything you said, I was listening and going, okay, yeah, that's why I would stand up, and this is why I would stay down. Okay, yeah, you answered everything I even thought of. Good job. And
Yeah,
great question, Karen.
and the thing about standing, I know, at least for me, when I started riding my bike, it could be a balance issue. Some people may feel a little bit out of balance because they're going to put a little bit more weight on their arms to help balance them out on that position. So it's definitely something that may take, depending on your experience, a little bit of adjusting and a little bit of getting used to. So practice in a safe environment by yourself in training, when you're just kind of doing some warm-ups and cool down areas when you're alone, just so you're not feeling like you're going to get uncomfortable or unstable and potentially knock into someone. If it's a Peloton, you want to be able to practice on your own.
And I would say this, and I'm thinking about the distances, full distance, half distance, and even an Olympic, I would stand toward the last mile or so to stretch out the legs. After being in the position to aero most likely for hours in a full distance, that you want to stretch your legs for preparation for the run. And just think of all the repetitive motion that you've done in a certain position, and those muscles already be into a certain fatigue, that it's good to let me give those a rest for the next 10 minutes, maybe up out of the saddle a couple times at the end of your race in preparation for the run, just to give them a change of feel before you start going vertical on the run.
Right. And also towards the end of races, I'll usually increase my cadence to get my legs spinning faster on the bike, because it's it's going to flush my legs out. It's going to use different muscles, and then it's going to get my running legs ready to get off the bike and run. A quick story about standing. So back in the day when I started in the 90s, I was always read that you should sit up and you're going to get stronger if you're climbing in a sitting position. So I rarely stood. I only stood unless I absolutely had to on a climb because it was so steep. And I had a competitor, her name was Terry Duthie, and she would always crush me on the bike. And over the years, when I would race with her, I would see her standing. This was usually in the Boulder Peak Triathlon. I'd see her standing on this big hill, and she was so strong. She would stand and just ride away from me. So because of her, I'm like, well, she stands on climbs. I'm going to start training and I'm going to start riding my bike up hills standing. And so it kind of changed the way I trained on hills just because I saw her being so much stronger and faster when she stood on those climbs. So it's
Hmm.
just kind of fun story to share.
Well, okay, since we're still on this topic here, I'm thinking when you are standing, you are basically crushing, or what do you just kind of you're crushing down, you're pressing down
Right.
hard, so you're not getting that upswing of the heel. So
Hmm.
if you are seated, you are cycling more efficiently. The
Right.
rotation is consistently going down and up, pressing down and then pulling up with the heel. When
Yep.
you're standing, it's just pressing, it's just crushing
Just
down.
crushing on your quad.
Yeah, so there's that where the fatigue can come in. It depends on how tall, long this hill is. If you can
Hmm.
just, if it's a half mile, yeah, go ahead and crush it, get up there, and then spin it out. But you're most efficient seated. But like you said, once you get below a certain RPM, a certain cadence, then it's not going to be. I mean, you're in the wrong gear. You can't do it. It's just like
Right.
it's wasteful going 50 cadence, and you're going 5 miles per hour. You might as well stand. You're just working just as hard anyway.
Yep.
Speaking of, this question from Scott, what do you mean by dead spot when doing one gear drills on the bike? The dead spot of the rotation, coach.
So this goes back to doing one-legged drills on your bike, on your trainer. That's the best way to do it when you're stationary. And you unclip with one leg and then you just pedal with one leg at a time. And there's
Hmm.
four main aspects of the pedal stroke. There's that backstroke, like you just talked about, where your heel's down. Then there's the upstroke, so you're engaging more of your hamstring. There's the over the top, and then there's the downstroke. And when you do one-legged drills, left leg, right leg, you may find that you're not pedaling um, efficiently, smoothly, and that you have like a part in your, you know, pedal stroke, one of those aspects of the pedal stroke that you're just kind of stuck and you kind of
Hmm.
stop. And that could be because the bike doesn't fit you. And that spot where you feel stuck, that's called the dead spot. And that could be because the bike doesn't fit you, or you're just weaker muscular wise in one leg or the other leg, or you're very quad dominant and you need to strengthen your hamstrings, or you're very hamstring dominant and you need to strengthen your quads or your glutes. So it's a really good way to, again, test out if you have any limiters, any strength imbalances, is to do one-legged drills and see where that dead spot or that stuck spot is.
Yeah, it's a gearing too. If you have too easy of a gear, you're going to spin too fast down, and then there's going to be that dead spot where it's just like momentum carries you up, and you can't pull, you can't feel any resistance. So make it harder so that every motion of all four strokes feels there's resistance.
Yep.
If there's an element of that's missing, go a little harder so you can maintain a smooth gear flow all the way around. That's where I would recognize that dead spot, because the gear is too easy, and if it's too hard, you're also going to find out where you're weak. So move it around until you find an even resistance throughout the entire cycle. This question from Patrick: I feel like I'm doing Ironman training on a 10-man budget. The struggle is real. What are some hacks to save money? Well, Patrick, you're doing an Ironman. There's You've already committed thousands of dollars, most likely, if you put it all together in terms of your time investment, nutrition, gear, travel, entry fees, and so on. So there are some ways you can save some money, and when he's going to kick it off.
Yeah, so I have an article that I have on my website, the T2 Coaching blog, Racing on a Budget. And so one way to save money is if you do want to do an Ironman or a half Ironman distance race, you can sign up for a non-World Triathlon Corporation WTC event. There's some race companies out there that do direct those 140.6 and 70.3 distances that are not World Triathlon Corporation. So they're going to be a little bit less expensive. Another thing is the gear. What do you need? You need a bike, helmet, cycling shoes, running shoes, a swimsuit, cap, goggles, probably a wetsuit. There's a lot more gear that triathletes do have out there, but you have to assess, do you really need it or not? You know, I think I'm going to take like the hydration on the bike, for example. I do well. I have a bottle on my top tube and down tube. I don't invest in anything to put anything up front, and I don't invest anything to put any hydration system on the back of my bike. If you're a new athlete and you see, and that's all the bikes you see, you think you need all that hydration systems when in
Mhm.
actuality you really don't. A power meter is nice, but it's not something you need. A heart rate monitor is nice. It's not something that you really need. So you just have to create the list of needs versus wants, and that can help you save some expenses. When you're traveling, try to connect with other people, friends, family that are going, and you all like rent a house. So it's a little bit cheaper when you're renting something big if it's going to require a few days of accommodation at the event you're going to. With this day and age, most people belong to some sort of social media, Facebook group. So that's a way to kind of get to know other people that might be attending the same event you are, and you guys can carpool, take a taxi together from the airport, rent a car together. I mean, it's just kind of really teaming up with other people. And then going back to the gear thing, trying to shop on maybe Craigslist or eBay or Slow Twitch. I know usually has a gear listing. And then also like for cycling gear, if you're connected to some sort of um, collegiate cycling club or other professional cycling club around, they're usually, blowing out their stuff every year. They get new gear every year because they have sponsors. So you could potentially get something that's worth, $10,000 bike that was used for one season, and they might be selling it for, let's just say, $5,000, for example. So there is ways, to kind of, shop for the gear that you need at a little bit lesser value than buying all your gear at the World Triathlon Corporation race venue or race expo for that year.
Yeah, there's a decent turnover in the sport. I don't know the average years that people spend in triathlon, but there's people always leaving and there's people coming in, and there's plenty of forums, classified sections. The clubs, I remember a few years ago, many years ago actually, traveling, and I traveling with my bike first time. I don't have a bike box. They're not cheap,
Hmm.
and they usually use them once, once a year, twice a year, maybe. Same thing with a wetsuit. I mean, depends on how where you are, how many times you're doing open water swimming where it requires the wetsuit. Um, Not everyone uses their wetsuit every weekend. Ask around, can I borrow a wetsuit? Or put it out there on your social media. Who's got a size? Fill in the blank. Who has a bike box they're not using? If someone asks me for a bike box, absolutely. It's got dust on it. You can use it. Hell, you can keep it. I don't know, but you have these options. Even race wheels, which is a little bit touchy because they're expensive, and unless you give some sort of guarantee to your friend, like, hey, if they bust, it's on me. But if not, hey, take my race wheels. That's a great way if you want to the right size. Um, yeah, even a helmet. If you want a more aerodynamic helmet, you have a buddy who has one. That's a way. Just ask your friends. The community
Yeah.
is very giving, in my opinion.
Yeah, and again, usually like if you belong to a tri club, the tri
Yeah.
club in your area has partnerships. So they
Mhm.
have partnerships that they can offer deals on nutrition products or like wetsuits or swimsuits or cap and goggles, or they have a partnership at a local triathlon store or local bike store. And so that's why the community is so valuable to get to know the people in your community who are doing the things that you want to do.
This one from Kate. Why are the breaks between sets so short when swimming laps in the pool, unlike running and cycling, where there is often time to settle down between work intervals? In swimming, the rest periods can feel extremely brief. All right, now that I got that out there, coach, take it away.
I think we've talked about this before, probably a couple of years ago. So when you swim, you do sets like endurance sets, technique, tempo, threshold, speed, recovery types of workouts. And so when you're doing the rest interval is just going to be dependent on the intention or purpose of what you're trying to get out of the workout. So if you're trying to get a threshold workout, for example, let's say 10 to 20 by 100s at your threshold effort, I'm going to suggest a rest interval, a shorter rest interval, so you can keep that heart rate if you're training by heart rate, at that threshold feel. If you're not training by heart rate, if you're training by pace or feel, I'm still going to keep that rest interval short, maybe 10 up to 20 seconds maximum, so you can keep that threshold effort or threshold heart rate. If you're doing an aerobic set, then I'm going to keep the rest interval. Again, I could keep it short or long. If you're a beginner swimmer, I'm going to keep the aerobic set rest interval longer because you're a beginner swimmer and I want you to stay in that aerobic heart rate zone or aerobic heart rate effort. You're going to need a little more rest than someone who has experience and has some fitness in the water. So it really just depends on the intention and the fitness level that you're at. When I'm giving you a sprint set, let's say 20-25s at sprint maximal effort, then I'm going to give you a longer rest interval because the point is so you can keep that high intensity pace or effort. So the more rest you have, the more likely you're going to be able to nail that certain pace. So again, I'm talking about pace, effort, heart rate. That is also going to determine what that rest interval is going to be. Now, when you're biking and running, you're using larger muscle groups. You're still trying to get the same adaptation, the same intention of the workout, whether it's endurance, speed, tempo, or threshold. But while you're resting, you're probably walking while you're running, or you're spinning on the bike at a lower effort. And so the rest interval is going to be longer biking and running because you're doing that active recovery. Someone like me as a swimmer, I also will do that active recovery between work intervals. Not many swimmers do that because they don't have the experience that I do. So hopefully that helped answer the question.
Plus, you need to breathe after a hard swim workout. You can always breathe when you're running and riding your bike, but you need to stop and keep on and breathe in between swim workouts, right? Like otherwise you're in the waters. I need to stop. I need to breathe. Otherwise my
Right.
face is underwater.
Right.
This question from Julie. We've all experienced this one. The best way to deal with pre-race nerves. What are your tips, Coach?
With all my experience, the best way that I've dealt with pre-race nerves is experience. The more races I've done, the more training I've done without a break, the more fitness I've built, just the more experiences I've had through racing and training, both, good and bad. How I define good and bad has built the confidence that I need. And when I go into races confident that I've prepared as well as I could have based on my life circumstances and goals and what I hope to get out of the event, I don't have any nerves. The last time I was really had those nerves that everyone's talking about was in 2003, or no, the time that I finally got off the nerves. So I started training in 1992. It wasn't until 2003 that I went to my first event and I didn't have any nerves. And I think that was just because I had been training and racing for so long, and I just don't like that feeling that I made the decision that I'm like, I just don't want to feel this way. I'm going to go into the race like it's another day of training. And so my attitude and my perception of what I was about to start wasn't a race, wasn't a competition. It was just another day of training. And that keeps my nerve level down.
I think the best teacher is experience. You need to put some reps in, and those reps, just like any discipline, the more you do it, the more relaxed you get.
Yep.
And the more start lines you can step on, hearing that gun go off, getting used to what that feels like, and then experiment. Like Wendy just said, if you treat it, when you get to a point and you treat the race like it's a training day mentally, it takes some pressure off yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it will work for you, maybe it won't, but you need to experiment with these different approaches to the day, and that's where the experience comes into play.
Yep.
You go to a sprint, how exciting is that versus an Ironman? Big difference. There's similar nerves for the first timer and also the Ironman distance. Those can be very similar in the nerves because both are monumental in the first attempt at a triathlon, in a sprint, and the attempt of a full distance Ironman. Those are both big days. But that's what I think is that teacher is your experience, and the more you get used to it and the mindset going into it. What is your approach? What is your why? Why are you there? And what do you hope to accomplish? it is just you. You know, it's not a team sport. It's you and what you've prepared to do. And if you're unprepared, you can be more nervous. You could also be nervous just because you want to do well. I understand that.
Right. And making sure like you may, when you sign up for this race, you have certain expectations going into it. It's okay for those expectations to change. Not expectations, but it's okay for those goals to change based on the training. So you sign up for a race and it's a year away, you're excited, you have certain expectations, you think you're going to train a certain way or feel a certain way leading up to the race. And just due to life and things that happen to you, that may not have happened. So you want to make sure you adjust, not change your expectations, but just adjust your expectations that they match your current fitness and what you were able to do training wise, looking back at your training log to see all the progress you've made or haven't made, and adjust your expectations accordingly. And that helps take the pressure off yourself, because most of these expectations are coming from within, less from external sources and all from within.
And you know, when you step on the line, whatever distance it is, that you've done the time or you haven't done the time. You cannot expect to do a 9-minute pace if you've never ran a 9-minute pace. Don't expect to do an 8-minute pace if you've only done 9 minutes in training. So you know what's realistic. And then once you look at your training going, okay, this is what I've done. All right, let me add a few seconds to that, because it's a race. And it's like chess. Every hour it changes. Every half hour can change on the elements, your nutrition, how you feel, what the day is like. I mean, you want to get good at adapting, do a triathlon, do a longer distance triathlon. The day is always evolving. You're listening to yourself, you're taking an experience in. It's never the same, and it's always exciting.
Yep.
That covers a lot today in this podcast. So you want to submit a question, you can do so across any of our social media platforms, and just look for the Endurance Hour. You won't miss us. Leave a comment on iTunes, and we will respond. Wendy and I are always active, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. There's also our private group called T2 Endurance on Facebook. We have over 700 members there who are putting questions in, getting feedback. Wendy's putting some challenges and goals out there, extra resources. So it's all available to you just by looking for the Endurance Hour. Any final thoughts from you, Coach?
A little update on my recovery from my broken patella. We are at 8 weeks post broken patella, 7 weeks tomorrow post surgery. I'm walking pretty comfortably with run crutch and my knee brace on, and that's exciting news, because that was definitely a game changer, is just to be a little bit more mobile. Getting up and down the stairs is so much easier. And so things are going well.
And you posted a picture or a video, was it both on Facebook and Instagram, of you walking?
Of me walking for the first time in 6 weeks.
I don't think I've seen you smile any bigger than that, except when you finished Kona last year or the year before.
Yeah. I mean, these small little progressions definitely make me happy that it's progressing in the right direction. And I still have a long way to go. So people get excited for me, and I'm, it's exciting. And at the same time, I really won't know for me personally how I'm doing until this is done. And it could be another 4 months until I really know how strong my quad is. My knee is pretty solid. It's just the muscle. It's my quad, and all the muscles in my leg are weak. And so for me, how well I'm doing will be how well I'm doing knowing my running future, my ability to run up and down hills again, because that's what I really enjoy doing. That will really determine actually how I'm doing. But every little day, every time I go to my physical therapist, they're really happy with my progress. My surgeon's really happy with how he did on my surgery. And so that makes me happy.
That's funny. Yeah, I just got an email, a 2-year reminder for my little knee cleanup from 2 years ago in May. It's weird. So they're wanting feedback. Hey, it's been 2 years since your surgery. How's it going?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to fill out that summary, but yeah, we've had some knee surgeries 2 years apart now.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, congratulations on the mobility. And for those of you listening, thank you so much for joining us and supporting the podcast. Have a great week of training, racing, or recovery. We'll see you back here next time Adios.
Adios.